And everyone here we all know what we're good at and what we're not good at. And sometimes we're in denial about that. And I would urge everyone to always really consider what your strengths and weaknesses are. My weaknesses are patience, children, and men. That's where I lose my patience. So that is not my area of strength. So I focus on the things I am good at, which is talking, partying, skiing, working hard. I can do that. I can ski hard. What's that? Medicating other people. Thank you. I'm a farm-to-table gynecologist. Thank you very much.
Oh, people are saying that this is your most vulnerable and introspective book yet, and you've written 7 books. What was different about this one, and why do you think people are saying it's so reflective and honest? I mean, I know because I've read it, but did you set out to write such an honest and reflective book?
Well, the book came about, I was dating Joe Coy, and I had a conversation with my editor, Whitney Frick, who said, we want you to write a book about falling in love because it was a very public love affair, and we were demonstrative, and it was all over Instagram, and people loved it and were so supportive of our relationship that it was really infectious, and it made me so happy to see people so happy and rooting for us that I was like, yes, like who would expect me to write a book about falling in love? Mm-hmm. And I thought that was such a sweet idea, and then we broke up. And I was like, whoopsie doodle, Now what? And Whitney and I spoke, and she said, what about writing a book about your breakup? Because this was the first time I had broken up with a person where I acted gracefully, with dignity. There was no, it wasn't ugly. It wasn't publicly known what happened. And I didn't air my dirty laundry, which was a sign of growth and maturity. And I was basking in the glow of maturity. I was like, oh, look at me, Maybe I should tell people how to break up. And then I thought, I can't write a book about breaking up. Like, that's just not my personality. I'm on the upswing, not the downswing. So then I thought, okay, let's just take a beat. And Whitney said, take a beat and think about, what it is you want to say. And if you have anything to say, and if not, we won't do it. And so I did. I took a few months, and I just really reflected seriously about what it means to be a woman. Like, what it means to be a sister to other women, and not just to women, to other men, and to other people who feel unseen. Like, what does it mean to show up in huge ways in your life for others, and while remaining true to the person you are, and getting so clear-headed about who you are that you are able to impact so many people's lives in a positive way. And I thought that message was powerful, but I didn't really know how to kind of crystallize all that. So I just started writing like things that impacted me, people who impacted me in my life, and people that I've impacted. And I thought about those stories, and I was like, oh, these are important things to share with other women. Like, I think we are experiencing what female sisterhood really means right now. And it is so important to not have it be a zero-sum game where women are competing with each other. All ships rise with the tide, So that's something that is very important to me, to always show up for women, because I understand the way that we've grown up thinking, oh my God, there's only room for a couple of us. And I think what's happening in the world right now, politically, everything, women are so powerful, it is freaking everybody the fuck out.
Yeah.
And our togetherness and our support of one another is freaking everyone out. And that's why I think we're in the situation we are. But I'm not worried about it, because I know how powerful women are, and I know how powerful sisterhood is. And I know that this isn't a great time right now, but I'm very optimistic about the future, because we're not going anywhere.
Hell yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Speaking of sisterhood,
I'm president. I couldn't survive on that salary. President.
I don't think the White House is nice enough for you. You wouldn't like it.
No,
You have to completely...
I find the White House to be very tacky.
Yeah. Speaking of sisterhood, there's one of my favorite stories in the book is when Jane Fonda invited you over for dinner and confronted you about your behavior. How did you feel in that moment, and how did it shape your outlook moving forward?
Well, Jane Fonda, yes, I tell this story in the book. I was at one of her parties, and she basically summoned me to her house. She sent me an email one day and was like, Chelsea, I'd like to talk to you at my house. And I was like, oh, okay. Obviously, I have to go. It's Jane Fonda. And I was like, great, when? And she's like, tonight. I'm like, oh, okay. And I remember going over there kind of knowing something was up. And when she sat down and talked to me, I remember her chef or someone who was working at her house came and asked me if I wanted a martini, and I was like, no, I'm just going to be sober for this interaction. I don't want any trouble. And then she kind of laid it on. She goes, you're probably wondering why I asked you over here. You were really badly behaved at a party. At the last party you were at, and you had a real dark cloud around you. You insulted many people, and I just don't understand why you would even have come out that night. I don't know what drugs you were on. And I remember looking at her being like, oh my God, like so mortified, It's so mortifying to have a hero of yours tell you you're a loser. But I had just started therapy, and I was 40 years old. I had just been to therapy maybe like 3 times, enough times to understand and learn that you can't be defensive defensive is wrong. Like if you're arguing about your own behavior, you're wrong. Like if you're right, you don't have to argue. Like you only argue if you're wrong. You only raise your voice and lose your temper when you're defensive. And that's not how I could have handled that situation. And I knew not to handle it that way. So I just looked at her and I wanted to be like, no, but I didn't. I was like, shut up, just listen to Jane Fonda. And the overarching theme of that was, even in my mortification in that moment, I knew that this was sisterhood, that she loved me because she took the time to have this conversation, which was a difficult conversation to have, when she could have just blown me off and never spoken to me again. She didn't have to do that. Mm-hmm. And I knew that day when she said that to me, I was like, I want to be like that. I want to be that kind of woman that tells another woman the truth instead of skirting or, shirking away from a difficult conversation.
Yeah, that's such an important lesson. So switching gears a little bit, there are a hilarious couple of stories at the beginning of the book about you when you were little. You had this lemonade stand, you spiked the lemonade to make more money. There's a story about, when you were lying about you did lie about your age when you were babysitting,
Yes,
So,
yes, that's true.
in your youth, you did lie.
Right.
Before you were famous, when you
But
could
I
get
lied
away
in
with
the
it.
opposite direction.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it doesn't count. But what stuck out to me was you've always been Chelsea, you've always had this crazy work ethic. Talk to us a little bit about your work ethic. You tour nonstop. You have a Netflix special coming out. You have a podcast. You have a Vegas residency. You've written 1 million books. I mean, what's the deal? Why do you work so hard?
Because I have a husband to support. No, I'm just kidding. No. I don't know. I'm a hustler. I like working. I like what it gives me. I like the lifestyle it provides me, and I love having an impact over people. I love when people tell me that they grew up with me, or that I got them through a tough time, or that they look up to me or they're inspired by me. Like when someone says, I'm gonna write a book because of your book. That's how I felt when I read David Sedaris' book. I was like, oh, you can write books with essays that really have nothing to do with one another? I was like, I could do that. Just tell funny stories, I could do it. But I do really like to work, and I'm proud of my work ethic because people are always surprised. Whenever I work with anyone, they're like, oh my God, you're such a hard worker. And to me, that's like the best compliment you could ever give me. I want to be a hard worker. I think there's nothing more impressive. I'm not a workaholic. I mean, I have as much fun as I do when I work, I actually, the two things are together. Like, work is fun. And it's hard, but I think it sets a really important example also just for the other women in my life and women everywhere. Like, this is kind of a man's life, you know? Like, now we're living in a world where women can do these things, but like when I grew up, there weren't a lot of women doing these things. So it was important to me to kind of be the guy, so to speak. You know, I wanted to be like a woman who could accomplish those things. And so I've always been, I'm not very competitive with other people, but I'm very, very hard on myself, which is something I can work on. And I'm very competitive with myself. Like, you can do that better. You can do that better. You can ski better. You can write better. You know, you can do this. So I think that's the reason I work so hard. And, you know, obviously I like money. I'm not going to pretend I don't. I like a lifestyle. Yeah.